Hi, romance readers. I am Liz Donatelli. Welcome to a special awesome 80s episode of Reader Seeks Romance, the #1 romance novel talk show on YouTube. The show welcomes SKYE MCDONALD, author of 1980s romance, The Not So Nice Girl, and REICHERT and KERRIE FLANAGAN, authors of contemporary 80s themed rom-com Back to the 80s. The authors discuss their rad new romance novels and play awesome 80s trivia. Enjoy and be sure to like and subscribe. Welcome to Reader Seeks Romance, authors.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Let's see everyone's 80s attire. SKYE, if you could stand and show the rest of your t-shirt.
Okay. The kind of girl your mother warned you about. I got the digital heart and the cassette. I got the scrunchie up top.
Nice. That's good book promotions. Have you been wearing that around town?
Wearing it, giving them away as swag at book cons. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, excellent. Essie, can you show your Back to the Future shirt?
I have the DeLorean and of course 1.21 gigawatts because I'm, kind of a science nerd and I had to borrow a daughter's scrunchie because all of my original ones are probably in a landfill somewhere.
I was just going to say, probably.
Been a while.
Now, KERRIE, you have the scrunchie theme going on you as well, and got to see the eyelids.
Ooh,
see the blue? Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, got to go with the blue.
Yes, excellent. I wasn't sure if someone would show up with anything frosted, like frosted lipstick or frosted eyeshadow. I almost purchased some, but I said I got to get a hold of myself because the wig was one thing, but yeah. What's the first word that comes to mind when you think of the 1980s? Let's start with KERRIE.
For me, it's journey. I was an obsessed Journey fan. So my room, and I am not kidding, was wall-to-wall Journey pictures, posters. I cut out tiny little words that said Journey. There was not an inch of wall space that did not have something Journey on it.
Oh, and I see the t-shirt, the
Yes.
concert tee in the back.
Yes, I got at a Journey concert. So
Nice.
I know. So that's what I think of.
Essie, what do you think of?
That's kind of tough. The oddest thing popped in was synthesizer. I think the 80s music was probably the most influential along with the movies, but yeah, definitely. It was an odd time.
SKYE, what do you think of?
The first word that came to my mind was rad. Like radical. I remember when I was in high school, we had a club, like an informal club that was like an homage to the 80s. So we were like fans of the whole vibe even back then. The more I think about it, I think like Reagan, you just said synthesizer, Essie, and I'm thinking like how much music and movies were influenced, but how much of a time it was of like tangible style, right? A very pronounced kind of style, a very like unabashed sort of luxury in a way. And that's a very kind of interesting thing. But rad was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. I actually found out online, I didn't realize it, that decade has been referred to as the greed decade, which ties into Reagan and he was president forever and the Republicans were in charge.
And you think of like the stock market was like crazy busy and it was a weird time.
Wall Street. The movie Wall Street, greed is good, right? That became an anthem for people. Like it inspired legions of people to work on Wall Street.
Yeah.
I believe the movie was meant to be like a cautionary tale and an anti-capitalist tale.
And
I will tell you right now, it became an anthem for people who aspired to work on the street. So that really backfired. But greed is good. That was the line.
For sure.
Everybody hooked in.
What appeals to each of you most about the 1980s as romance writers?
I like that it was super hip, and there are still a lot of things that, style wise and coming of age wise are still relevant now and not terribly different. And yet, because of the gap between now and then in terms of technology, it was in many ways, if you will, lack of a better term, a simpler time. So you're not having the complexity of group chats and Twitter and all of the things, but you still have young adults being young adults. The sexual revolution had already happened, so you can be pretty free with what's appropriate and what's acceptable as a romance writer, without all of the information that we have now. So that sort of like in between time, that was really fun.
Kerrie, what appeals to you from a romance writing perspective about the 80s?
And this fits in with the book that we wrote. It's John Hughes movies. I mean, it was those teenage, angsty, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, 16 Candles, Ferris Bueller, all those great teenage movies that to me were, and for Sarah and I, when we were writing this together, it was the inspiration. It was quoting, throwing quotes from movies back and forth. It just helped inspire us and provide that model almost on what does a good rom-com look like.
They both kind of answered what I would have probably said. It was a simpler time. I think that there wasn't so much exposure to the rest of society, like through social media and whatnot. So you were in your town, you were in your class, you were in this smaller group of people. It was a lot more intimate. And I think that along with the dynamic of like a John Hughes movie, I liked the romanticism in that what we have left of the era movies and whatnot, music, they were starting to really express different cliques, different people, different times. There was a sexual revolution right before, like the AIDS epidemic and whatnot, where it was still kind of fun and light and flirty. And I don't know, it was just it wasn't innocent, but it was a reawakening of being able to be romantic. And I think some of the best male leads come from that era. When you look at, Say Anything and Lloyd Dobler and, all of these guys that were still caring, still had emotion, and it was still okay. I think that's actually kind of revolutionary, and, I like a romantic lead who wants to commit suicide when his girlfriend dumps him, but in really funny ways, not in serious ways.
So you were a Lloyd Dobler fan of,
yes.
Okay. So Skye, you're shaking your head. So for you too?
Yeah, I love John Cusack. And, it's an interesting point that Essie makes, because while certainly there are some stereotypes and things of the 80s that we can agree, I think, are pretty outdated. The essence of being young and free and all of those things definitely still carries and resonates. But you have a really good point, Essie, about the evolution of the male hero as not just being like an alpha, right? Like John Cusack always played a very like flawed, sort of more like of a beta cinnamon roll kind of character, and that was desirable. He was very much a heartthrob, and I think that is an interesting sort of coming point or turning point in the 80s in terms of what we were seeing as what a leading man could be.
How about Jon Cryer as Ducky? Anybody a Ducky fan? Kerrie, you a Ducky fan?
Oh yeah, you have to be a Ducky fan. Who wouldn't? But it goes to that showing that diversity. So in Pretty in Pink, Molly Ringwald did not fit the mold of what that ideal teenager looked like, and Ducky, her best friend. And so it really just embraced that we all have our own strengths. We're all different, and it's okay. And yeah, Andrew McCarthy was not your alpha male in that one. He was adorable as all get out, but
he's the inspo for my main character in my book.
Being you mentioned that first, I'll go with you, Skye. Tell me about your romance protagonists, Eleanor and Sam, in The Not So Nice Girl.
So Eleanor and Sam are a friends to lovers situation. You have this character of Eleanor who comes into town, her brother and best friend live in Nashville, but she's from Atlanta, and she is really struggling because she does not identify as having a home. She's freewheeling. She's basically running from her past and doesn't really want to admit the damage that's been done to her in the past. So she just doesn't want to settle down. But she walks into the record store, Stacked Records, aka Mac's Joint, and Sam happens to be behind the counter. And instantly, you have a spicy scene in a listening booth in the record shop. But when she goes back to where she's staying with her friend, she tells her that he looked like Blaine from Pretty in Pink. So Andrew McCarthy, thank you very much for being character inspiration for Sam. And then from there, you have this pair of friends who Eleanor feels like she can't step into a relationship and mess up the friend group because she's only there for a short time and she's not ready to settle down. And Sam, at the same time, is dealing with realizing that he's not going to be the alpha male. He's not going to be the good husband material. He is a little nerdy and not big and strong and everything that he thought he was supposed to be. So a lot of the book is around letting go of gender stereotypes and expectations that are placed on you generationally and societally, and just being who you are. So I guess it really probably does go with the kind of John Hughes vibe of like, who are you, and that being lovable. So yep, that's Eleanor and Sam and how they meet.
I love that your character, Skye, was based on Andrew McCarthy's character, and then our female character is named Blaine, and she is named after
that's awesome.
So ours is contemporary. It pays homage to the 80s because our main character, her mother passes away, leaves her a store that's filled with 80s memorabilia. So that's how we get that tie to the 80s. And she just loves that decade. So she knows everything there is to know about that decade. And so that's where, Blaine comes in. So Sarah, then you can take it from there and explain Eric and how they meet.
It's weird because it's interesting to write a character who's so submerged in the 80s. Like, she wears the clothes and the eyeshadow, and I don't know where she finds mom jeans. I mean, now it's popular, but when we were writing it didn't. But so she's definitely in that era. She loves it. It connects her to her mom, who has passed away. And she runs the store, of course. And Eric is he's a developer. His family does development. So they are buying the strip mall that she's in, and they're going to tear it down and create a brewery, because in Colorado, there's always a brewery going in. So it becomes a enemies to lovers situation where they meet in the store. She makes a bet with Eric that if she can tell him and show him how amazing the 80s were, that he will try to find a different place for the brewery and save her store, because it's pretty much all she has left. It's her whole life. And so then they go into this series of not dates, but like historical adventures where she takes him to different places. And it's interesting because these places exist. Kerrie and I got to go down to Denver, visit some pinball arcades and regular arcades with vintage games, and some stores that were all 80s memorabilia. And so she takes him to these places and she shows him kind of parts of the era, not just the pop culture, but what was happening politically and musically, and takes him to a cover band. And he sort of comes around, not just because it's a fun era and it's hard not to love it, but that he thinks she's really cute. So then, of course, there comes the reckoning of, is he going to tear down the store or not? But I don't want to give too much away.
No. She is out to prove to him that it was the best decade ever.
Yeah, well, and it's cool because his parents are also like, oh, yeah, I remember that movie, and I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In both of your novels, what kinds of 80s nostalgia can readers expect to encounter? What types of trends are mentioned, pop culture events, any type of like vernacular? Skye?
Oh, hold my drink. So my book is set in 1986, in Nashville in 1986. And I did a lot of research to make sure that it was accurate to that year and to that season. right? So Saturday morning cartoons. My characters hang out and watch Saturday morning cartoons, and the lineup is actually accurate for the summer of '86. They're all hanging out and they're like, let's go to the movies. And they're like, yeah, that movie about that kid skipping school. And because Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out, and then at some point Labyrinth gets mentioned because that was released that summer. Yeah. There's tons of music. A lot of scenes happen in the record store. The owner of the record shop is a very important kind of like sage character, like a wise character. So there's all these music references. You don't get a lot of political, right? These are people who just graduated college. They're hanging out. It's a summer, they're new graduates. So they're not talking a lot about politics that are going on. So that's not really as focused, but music, movies, TV, and fashion, right? You get the high waist acid jeans, you get the blue eyeshadow. In fact, there's even a wedding at the end that they have to attend, and there's peach and aquamarine. So
that's awesome. What 80s nostalgia can readers expect to find in the pages of Back to the 80s?
Because she has a store with 80s memorabilia, we did from our memory, from places we visited. I even did some research on eBay, different toys of the era, Cabbage Patch dolls and Transformers and Matchbox cars and everything like that. So she carries not just the toys, but she'll carry technology from the era, like Walkmans and
Casio keyboard.
Casio keyboard. She also has like a small music collection in the back. So there's a lot of the memorabilia that comes into it pretty strongly. And then because she's sort of been raised in an era that's not her own, there's a lot of music quotes. There's a lot of quotes from movies, especially Better Off Dead, because that's one of our favorites. And she even has a pet guinea pig named Charles Dumas. So we're pretty excited about that happening in the world.
It was just so much fun to relive that. I didn't have to do a lot of research. Graduating in 1986, I just had to sit, get quiet, and think back to the good old days. And but we did have to do some research to figure out exactly which toys and everything.
Now, the 80s isn't so far away that you can't interview people and talk to people. So who did you talk to? What kind of research is...
I talked to Kerrie.
Okay, so you just talked to Kerrie. Okay. Tell me about what your resources were. And did you find anything surprising about the era that you hadn't experienced firsthand or even known happened? So now, Kerrie, as the resource, what you did, you said you did a little bit of research. Did you find anything that you're like, where was I when that happened? I don't remember that.
No, not really. But I did love that we did do our field trip and we went to this store that had all this memorabilia. And then we went and played arcade games and just to, bring back all those memories, watched some more movies. So I can't think of anything that surprised me and like, oh gosh, I had no idea that that was going on.
I remember my grandma being angry at Reagan because he had declared that ketchup was a vegetable, so schools could serve ketchup and it would count. And I thought, was that grandma or did that happen? Yeah. So I remember researching that, and yes, in fact, he did.
Really?
Yeah. And then I also remember there's a quote in the book where Eric's talking to Blaine about how, she says it's a simpler time, and he says, well, it was like the age of excess and Wall Street and all of these economical things. And there was actually kind of a recession in the 80s. So I learned a little bit about that I didn't know before.
Right. Now, you talked to Kerrie. Did you talk to anyone else in your life about the 80s to get some other perspectives?
I didn't, but this is weird, but okay, I'm from Wyoming. And I always tell people we're always like a decade behind. Now, the internet has helped us. But so growing up in the 80s and 90s, we were still kind of in the 80s when it came to what we got on our television, what we got on the radio. We were like, so a lot of it's weird to me that Kerrie and I, we're not that much different in age, but we still remember seeing the same movies at the same age because it was in a little pocket of, apart from the world.
SKYE, what kind of resources? Who'd you talk to?
I talked to my dad because the character who is the record store owner is based directly on my dad. It is a total homage to George MacDonald. So I both talked to him and definitely just drew upon childhood memories of things that he said, and the way he would talk about music and different things. So there was that. But otherwise, I did do a lot of research, like I was saying about the Saturday morning cartoons and just knowing exactly what came out when. I really didn't want to mess that up, right? The Cure is Sam and Eleanor's favorite band, and I wanted to be very clear about what was out and what wasn't. One of the things I had to do is I wanted her to have heard of a band that like wasn't heard of. And she went in, that was why she went to the store to get an album. And she had asked Mac, the record store owner, to special order it. And it was the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Because they were this funky band out of California that nobody really knew in 1986, but they were already like an indie band. Right. So things like that were kind of fun to unearth. Yeah, that would definitely, the music and the movies of what was coming out was what I was researching most.
And what's interesting with Skye, because yours takes place in the 80s, I imagine we would have had to have done a lot more research as well. But ours is current, and we could pick the memories that we wanted to.
Right.
In the movies. So we just had to double check it came out in the time we thought, but that gave us a little more freedom to play around with that.
For sure. Skye, did you have to go to a library and find old TV guides to find the Saturday morning lineup?
No, shout out to Wikipedia. I couldn't believe they had that information. I started searching around and it was actually much easier to find than I expected. And I did a couple of like cross-reference searches with some other like TV sites, and indeed it was pretty correct. So I was like, all right. I thought that would be much more vague, but I was like, well, let me look it up and see how close I can get. Turns out pretty close.
When I think of the 80s, I think of Saturday morning cartoons, and I think of talk shows, because I watched a lot of Sally Jesse Raphael, Phil Donahue, Oprah. I felt so grown up, like I'm learning about life. And then on the week, on Saturday mornings, watching, oh my God, all these random cartoons that I don't even think anybody here would remember. I mean, there was the Mr. T, the Littles.
He-Man.
Which one?
He-Man. Masters of
He-Man was right after school. Yeah. I remember vividly coming home from school, watching He-Man while opening up Garbage Pail Kids that I had just purchased after school at the candy store.
Gross. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember from, I guess it was Saturday morning cartoons, was Rainbow Bright.
Bright.
Wanted to be her. I pretended I was her. That was my imaginary game. She touched that belt, that rainbow came out, she went riding on that horse. What was not to love?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
My Little Ponies has made a serious comeback, but nobody has brought back Rainbow, and I am disappointed in this.
I know.
And She-Ra made a comeback. My girls loved She-Ra, and
she was back?
A lot more woke than it is now. But yeah.
I didn't know She-Ra's back. I loved She-Ra too. The Not So Nice Girl is categorized as 20th century historical romance.
No.
When you say it like that, it hurts a little. That hits right here.
That's a category on Amazon. Come on, Liz.
That's but I mean,
Carrie, it's not me.
No, I don't think that it is.
No. It's not.
Talking to people now on Amazon categories, you gotta get the tags you can get, and I do think it's worth having that there because it is in the past. But technically, from all literary sites, 50 years tends to be the rule of thumb for what classes as historical. So no, we're not really there yet. We're gonna hold on to that. Yeah, I know. A lot of people have mentioned that. They're like, please don't say it. And I'm like, no, it's really not. It is it is historical in many ways now. And just like what we're talking about, there are things and traditions and information that now is completely different. Which was always interesting to me. Generations are classed as like every 20 years. Right. So millennials are like 1981 to like 2000. And that to me doesn't really track as a generation, because if you were born in 1994, what your childhood looked like was so wildly different
Yes.
But anyway, I digress. So yeah, it is technically not historical fiction. It is
Okay.
still contemporary, but saying that is a bit of a misnomer because it's definitely like set of a time.
Right. I feel as if someone who's maybe 18 years old reading your novel, to them, I think you could say that's historical fiction, historical romance, because that's totally different than what they experienced.
I would agree with
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 50 years. I mean, you do the math because I don't do math.
Look at all the writers going like,
So when would the 80s then officially like, okay, it is
about 10 years from now. 1980 was 43 years ago.
Okay.
Let's just say it's always going to be 10 years from now. Like
it's always
well, it's like 10 years ago was 1997. Like, isn't that still true?
Right.
But yeah, about 43 years ago from 1980 now. So roughly 10 years will be in that zone.
Okay. But we're closing in.
We're getting
well, then I know music now is considered, like Def Leppard is considered classic rock.
Well, that's just
Jam is classic rock.
Yes. If you go by the music world, 80s and 90s are now considered kind of history.
Right.
My bangs.
Because they're playing in the grocery store. You know, your era of music is now classic when it's playing in the grocery store.
And they're sampling it on TikTok.
Okay. So now a question about back to the 80s. How did co-writing work?
We did our research together. We did our field trip, which was absolutely fun. And then we worked on the outline together, which is hard for me because I'm a pantster. If you're not familiar with writers, I don't like too much of a plan. I like to write by scene and whatever comes to me. So thank goodness for Kerrie, because she's a little bit more organized and that kept me on point. I am also a little bit of a faster writer, but a messier writer. So I would write a scene and then she would come back through and kind of be like, this will work, this won't work. And then, we really collaborated a lot on what needed to happen, and we'd throw out different ideas. And yeah, she did a lot more of the editing because she's much better at that than I am. She will tell
love
you
doing it.
I'm a horrible head hopper.
You do like to head hop, but I love to edit. So it works out great.
That's a dream team. Now, SKYE also co-writes with another author. So hearing this, SKYE, that you have one author who likes to do the editing part, I mean, that sounds like a dream, huh? That you can have someone like, or not.
That would be sweet. I mean, as a former English teacher, I feel like that would always just sort of default to me. I don't know if I could just let the reins go. Luckily, we're both pretty into the editing. Like, we're pretty smooth with it. It would be lovely to have somebody who's like, yeah, I'll do that. But as an English teacher, I feel like it would probably just be me.
Gotcha. Okay. What went into designing your quintessential 80s book covers? Because they are a thing of beauty. And I feel as if there's a lot of detail. So that means there must have been conversations, and maybe you had more input in it than maybe other authors might, because this you have to get right. SKYE, what went into the Not So Nice Girl book cover?
That denim skirt, I just gotta say, yes.
I know, right? Somebody commented, they were like, I had this whole outfit. I was like, that's amazing. Small Town Girl Publishing did a great job bringing in an artist to do this. That's my publisher, and I'm very proud of it. They worked with me a lot on getting the record store vibe really just right, and making sure the albums looked kind of 80s-ish. That was the part that I wanted to make sure felt right. I love the colors. I love the purples and the blues, just not quite neon, but definitely vibrant. And then just kind of getting them, she's a little bit dressier than maybe I would have envisioned her, because Eleanor is very much about like jeans and stuff. But I love how in this one, she's kind of glammed up to kind of enhance the 80s vibe. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it smacked of the 80s without being like too much. But I think they did a great job, and I was really pleased with it. So yeah.
How many iterations did the book cover go through before you said, "Oh, that's the winner"?
Like 4, I think.
Oh, okay.
They were generally small tweaks of things,
but
okay. It wasn't like, it was good. And that's great, because I am not a graphic artist in any way. So, anytime I've worked with a book design, every time I've worked with a book designer, I'm always like, I don't know, but kind of. And then they sort of take it and make it a vision. So I've always been super grateful to artists because they take sort of a vague idea and really make something. And I'm like, oh, that is perfect. So yeah, very pleased.
Nice. I had a skirt like that, the denim skirt with the little ruffles. Those boots, I had something very, very similar to that in beige.
Ooh.
I remember, I don't know why it was beige, but I remember like that type of, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, I just noticed something else that I don't think slouch socks. Remember putting like multiple colors too.
Right?
Colors,
All the way up.
There was a whole art to that because you'd have one would be the main color and then you'd have the other one kind of peeking out a little.
Right.
That
And you
needs to go
coordinate with the top and the
Oh, sure.
Yes. Oh, tell me about the designing of Back to the 80s because there's some cool detail in that as well.
Five Prince Publishing has the graphic designer, and she did an amazing job. We did want a little over the top. We really did. But because Blaine has her store, we wanted it to have things in there. So we've got the book box, we got the Cabbage Patch, Rubik's Cube, and
Charles
we do have
Dumas.
the guinea pig. Charles Dumas is in there. And of course the game, an arcade game. And Blaine had to just go all in with, the scrunchy mom jeans, the slouchy splits. Well, they're not real slouchy, but it was the idea. And the white kid. Always have to have the white kids.
But Eric is like very business-like, so he did a good job of being like, he's weirdly stoic in the middle of all that brightness. So I like that.
And she nailed it quite early on. I think we may have maybe 3 times.
I think 3, yeah. And it was all just very little details, like we wanted the title to pop, against the background.
Right. So are there any more 80s themed romance novels in your futures? Or maybe even another era like the 90s? Oh, Skye looks like she needs to tell me something.
Well, I can go ahead and tell you first here that I have gone ahead and entered an agreement with Small Town Girl Publishing for next May, the end of next May. We're going to be publishing the sequel to The Not So Nice Girl. That will be set in the early 90s.
I just got chills.
We're gonna go ahead in time because, Liz, we've talked about this a little. This book is technically a prequel to my series that I have out, my Anti-Belle series. This is technically a prequel book. So we're moving forward in time a little, and you're going to see some characters come forward. And the sequel to this book will be focused on Sam's brother, Brian. So I'm excited to say that is already in the works.
Congratulations. SKYE and KERRIE, do you have any more 80s rom-coms in your future or 80s themed rom-coms in your future?
And I don't know if we're allowed to say so, but we do have a novella that we worked on through Five Prince Publishing that I believe I don't know how much we're allowed to say, like if people in dark coats will come out and take me. I don't think Bernadette has quite that much power, but we do have a short Christmas novella coming out, a holiday novella, kind of based around the same theme. It's contemporary, but it follows like some 80s sitcom stars. So
80s sitcom stars.
It's pretty cute.
It is.
Oh. I've got 5 rounds, 3 questions each, one for each of you. If someone gets it wrong or passes, then the other 2 will have a chance to, buzz in. Skye, you're first.
Okay.
What does VHS stand for?
Whoa. Video home system?
Video home system. That is correct.
That's what I was going to say too. I wasn't sure.
Next one is SE. Okay. In what year did Prince Charles and Lady Diana get married?
I'm trying to count back because I know that she passed away like my first year of college. So 87? That's too late. I think it was 85. I don't know.
What's your final answer?
80. Let's go 87.
You were incorrect. So
Okay,
I'm going to give KERRIE and Skye. Does anyone want to buzz in?
I think it's 82.
Ooh, incorrect, but close. Kerrie, do you want to try?
Okay. 83.
No, 1981.
Wow.
Oh.
That's earlier than I thought.
Okay.
I
Kerrie, the 1981 poetry collection, A Light in the Attic, was written by who?
Oh, Shel Silverstein.
That is correct.
you
Kerrie
gave
gets
her
it.
an easy one.
Every one of us book people were like, ah.
It was just by chance that Kerrie got the easy one. SKYE, what does CD stand for?
I'm on the tech rotation. Compact disc. That one I got.
That is correct. You get a point. SE, who played Johnny Castle in the 1987 movie Dirty Dancing?
Well, that would be Patrick Swayze.
That is correct. Kerrie, what 1984 film did John Hughes take just 2 days to write?
Whoa. Breakfast Club.
16 Candles. I shouldn't have given the answer. I should have given everyone a chance to answer that, but I didn't. So yes, the answer is 16 Candles.
I know that.
I would have guessed Breakfast Club too.
To be honest, I would have also. Okay.
Yeah, because it's a quicker script, really, right? It
Yeah.
spans one day. Anyway.
One day and pretty much one location.
What is 16 Candles technically? It's just one day.
Is it one day? It is.
Her birthday.
Oh,
Her
right.
birthday.
Apparently, 16 Candles came to him more clearly than The Breakfast Club, which is
But
interesting.
thinking about the quality of the two movies, that does actually make sense. Breakfast Club is a lot deeper.
There's a lot more personalities too.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, this is a non-tech question, SKYE. What is the name of the van that Scooby-Doo and his friends drive?
The Mystery Machine?
That is correct. SKYE gets points.
Yeah.
SE. What Billy Joel song featured over 100 different headlines from 1949 to 1989?
That would be We Didn't Start the Fire.
That is correct, SE. You get a point. Kerrie, what is the name of Rick Astley's iconic 1987 song?
I'm never gonna give you up.
That is correct.
She
You get a
just
point.
rickrolled you.
Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and desert you.
This round is multiple choice.
Okay.
SKYE, by the end of the 80s, roughly how many Cabbage Patch Kids were adopted? Close to 10 million, close to 58 million, or close to 65 million?
58?
Does someone else want to weigh in on either 10 million or 65 million?
65 million?
That is correct, SE. You get a point.
Oof.
Never into them.
I
Oh, I had like 4 of them.
People loved them, and they were expensive.
yeah.
I remember I got my first one as a gift from my aunt and uncle for my first Holy Communion, and it was $75, which was like, what?
Yeah.
That's expensive.
Back then, that's like the American Girl doll. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Okay, SE. On what sitcom did Kirk Cameron play Mike Seaver?
Oh, that.
Silver Spoons, Charles in Charge, or Growing Pains?
That would be Growing Pains.
That is correct. Kerrie, what was the name of Alyssa Milano's character on Who's the Boss? Was it Sarah Maselli, Samantha Maselli, or Angela Maselli?
Samantha.
Samantha Maselli, that is correct. Now, this is the last round. According to the hit 1981 song by Tommy Two-Tone, if you dial 8675309, you will reach a woman with what first name?
Jenny.
That is correct. So, SKYE, you are now tied with SE. SE. The opening of a crate and revealing a leg lamp is a pivotal scene in what 1983 holiday classic movie?
It would be The Christmas Story.
That is correct. Kerrie, in the 1980 TV show Knight Rider, what was the name of David Hasselhoff's talking car?
Kit.
Correct. So, by 1 point, it was a very close game. Essie is the winner. Well, thank you to Skye, SE, and Kerrie for joining me here on Reader Seeks Romance.
Thank you very much. This was so much fun. It was good to meet. Well,
So
I mean,
much fun.